Picture yourself standing in front of a mirror, in complete darkness. You reach out to touch your reflection, but your hand passes through empty air. You turn on a flashlight to see what's happening, but the moment the light hits the mirror, your reflection vanishes. You turn off the light, and you sense it's there again, but you can't see it. You can't touch it. You can't prove it exists. This isn't a ghost story. This is reality. This is what Werner Heisenberg discovered when he looked into the heart of an atom, and what he found there was so disturbing, so fundamentally unsettling, that it shattered our most basic assumptions about the nature of existence itself. Nature hides from us, Heisenberg once said, and he wasn't speaking metaphorically. He meant it literally. The universe, at its most fundamental level, actively conceals itself from observation. The very act of trying to understand reality changes reality. The moment you try to pin down what's really happening, what you're looking for disappears. And the implications of this discovery are absolutely terrifying. For thousands of years, human beings believed in a simple, comforting idea, that reality exists independently of our observation of it. The moon is there whether you look at it or not. Your coffee cup sits on the table with definite properties, whether you measure them or not. The world has an objective existence that doesn't depend on consciousness, on measurement, on human intervention. This belief formed the foundation of all scientific progress. We could study nature because nature was there to be studied. We could discover truth because truth existed independently of our discovery of it. We could understand the universe because the universe had definite, knowable properties waiting to be uncovered. But Heisenberg discovered that this foundational belief is completely wrong. It started innocently enough. In the early 1920s, physicists were trying to understand the behavior of electrons in atoms. They had models, they had theories, but when they tried to make precise predictions about where electrons would be and how fast they would be moving, something strange kept happening. The more precisely they tried to measure one property, the more uncertain the other property became. At first, everyone assumed this was just a technical problem. Better instruments would solve it. More sophisticated mathematics would crack the code. The greatest minds of the era, including Albert Einstein, believed that these quantum uncertainties were simply evidence of incomplete knowledge, not fundamental features of reality itself. Einstein famously declared that God does not play dice with the universe, expressing his conviction that beneath the apparent randomness of quantum mechanics lay a deeper deterministic reality. He believed that quantum mechanics was incomplete, that there must be hidden variables that, once discovered, would restore predictability and objectivity to physics. But Heisenberg, working with the mathematical formalism of quantum mechanics, made a discovery that changed everything. He wasn't just studying particles, he was uncovering the fundamental nature of knowledge itself. And what he found was that the very act of gaining knowledge about a quantum system inevitably disturbs that system in unpredictable ways. The uncertainty wasn't a bug in their measurements. It was a feature of reality itself. He formulated what became known as the Uncertainty Principle, but the name doesn't capture how radical this discovery really was. It wasn't just that we can't know certain things with perfect precision. It's that these things don't have precise values to be known. Before measurement, an electron doesn't have a definite position and momentum. These properties literally don't exist until the moment we try to observe them. Think about what this means for your most basic understanding of existence. You assume that your car has a definite location in your driveway right now, even though you're not looking at it. You assume that the book on your shelf has a definite position and that its pages contain definite words, even when the book is closed and no one is reading it. But according to Heisenberg's discovery, this assumption might be completely wrong. At the quantum level, properties don't exist independently of observation. And since everything in the universe is made of quantum particles, this principle might apply to everything, everywhere, all the time. And here's where it gets truly terrifying. The act of observation doesn't just reveal reality, it creates reality. Let me explain what this means in the most disturbing way possible. Right now, as you're watching this video, there are countless objects around you that you're not directly observing. According to quantum mechanics, these objects might not have definite properties. The chair behind you might be in a quantum superposition of being in multiple locations simultaneously. The coffee cup on your kitchen counter might be both full and empty until you go and look at it. Your act of observation forces these objects to choose definite properties from their quantum superposition of possibilities. But here's the truly unsettling part. You have no control over which properties get chosen. The universe makes these choices, and it appears to make them randomly. Think about what this means. You walk into a room and flip on the light switch. In the classical world, you're simply illuminating objects that were already there. The chair was in the corner, the book was on the table, the cat was sleeping on the couch. You're just revealing what already existed. But in the quantum world, the act of flipping the switch of observation literally brings these objects into definite existence. Before you looked, the chair existed in a ghostly superposition of being in all possible locations simultaneously. The book was in a quantum limbo of being on every surface at once. The cat was neither sleeping nor awake, but in a bizarre combination of both states. Your observation collapses this superposition into a single, definite reality. But here's the terrifying part. You have no control over which reality gets selected. The universe makes that choice, and it appears to make it randomly. This isn't science fiction. This is what the mathematics of quantum mechanics tells us about reality. And experiments have confirmed these predictions with extraordinary precision. The quantum world doesn't just behave as if this is true. This appears to actually be true. Heisenberg realized that we live in a universe that is fundamentally unknowable. Not because our instruments aren't good enough. Not because our theories are incomplete, but because knowledge itself changes what there is to know. Every time we try to pin down reality, reality shifts. Every time we try to catch nature in the act of being definite, nature slips away into quantum uncertainty. What we observe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning, Heisenberg wrote. This sentence should chill you to the bone. It means that objective reality, the reality that exists independently of observation, is forever hidden from us. We can never know what the universe is really like when no one is looking. But it gets worse, much worse. Consider the implications for the past. If observation creates reality, then what about events that happened before anyone was there to observe them? What about the formation of the solar system, the evolution of life on Earth, the extinction of the dinosaurs? Did these events have definite properties, or were they in quantum superposition until paleontologists and astronomers came along to observe the evidence? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest something even more mind-bending, that the past is constantly being rewritten by present observations. When you look at light from a distant star, you might not be observing something that happened millions of years ago. You might be forcing that light to choose a definite path through space at the moment you observe it. This is called the delayed choice experiment, and it has been performed in laboratories with results that confirm this bizarre possibility. Particles can be forced to decide how they behaved in the past based on measurements performed in the present. The history of the universe might be constantly changing, constantly being rewritten by every observation we make. If observation creates reality, then what happens when no one is observing? What is the universe like in the vast spaces between galaxies where no conscious observer has ever looked? What happens in the depths of atoms when no measurement is being performed? The honest answer is that we don't know. We can't know. The universe without observation might be completely different from the universe we experience. It might be a roiling sea of quantum possibilities, with no definite properties at all. It might be something so alien, so unlike our observed reality, that we don't even have words to describe it. This is what Heisenberg meant when he said that nature hides from us. The true nature of reality, the universe as it really is when no one is watching, is permanently concealed behind the veil of observation. We are trapped in a prison of measurement, forever separated from the reality we're trying to understand. And here's perhaps the most disturbing implication of all. If consciousness plays a role in creating reality through observation, then reality might be fundamentally dependent on minds. Without conscious observers, the universe might not have definite properties at all. The cosmos might be waiting, in a state of quantum limbo, for someone to look at it and force it to choose what to be. This raises questions that should keep you awake at night. Are we creating the universe through our observations, or is the universe creating us? If reality depends on consciousness, then what was the universe like before conscious beings evolved? Did the past only become definite when we developed the ability to observe and remember it? Let me make this even more personal and terrifying. If quantum mechanics applies to everything, including your brain, then your thoughts and memories might be subject to the same uncertainty principle. Your memories might not be records of definite past events, but quantum superpositions of all possible pasts that collapse into specific memories only when you try to recall them. This means that your past might not be fixed. Every time you remember something, you might be choosing one particular version of your history from a quantum superposition of all possible histories. The person you think you were yesterday might be different from the person you actually were, because the act of remembering forces your past to crystallize into a specific form. Your identity, your sense of self, your entire personal history might be constantly shifting and changing based on the quantum uncertainties in your brain. You might not be the same person from moment to moment, not because you're changing, but because the very concept of being a definite person might be an illusion created by the act of self-observation. Heisenberg himself struggled with these implications. He was a physicist, trained to believe in objective reality, but his own discoveries seemed to undermine the very possibility of objectivity. In his later writings, he became increasingly philosophical, grappling with questions that seemed to belong more to metaphysics than to science. The atoms or elementary particles themselves are not real, he wrote. They form a world of potentialities or possibilities rather than one of things or facts. This is a physicist telling us that the fundamental building blocks of reality aren't real in any sense we can understand. They're ghosts, possibilities, mathematical abstractions that somehow give rise to the solid world we experience. But how can possibilities create actuality? How can mathematical abstractions give rise to concrete experience? This is one of the deepest mysteries in all of science, and we're no closer to solving it today than we were in Heisenberg's time. Some physicists have proposed that consciousness itself might be the bridge between possibility and actuality. Perhaps conscious observation is what transforms quantum possibilities into classical realities. But this raises even more disturbing questions. What is consciousness? How does it work? And if consciousness creates reality, then what created consciousness? We might be trapped in an infinite regress where consciousness creates reality. But reality creates consciousness. But consciousness creates reality, and so on forever. We might be living in a cosmic feedback loop, where observers and the observed are so intertwined that it's impossible to say which comes first. And here's another terrifying possibility. Maybe there is no first. Maybe the universe is a self-creating, self-observing system where cause and effect, observer and observed, past and future are all mixed up in ways that our linear, classical thinking can't comprehend. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Heisenberg's discovery is what it implies about the nature of knowledge itself. For centuries, science has been based on the idea that we can understand the universe by observing it carefully and objectively. We believed that nature would reveal its secrets to patient, systematic investigation. Heisenberg showed us that this belief is naive. Nature doesn't just hide its secrets from us. Nature doesn't have secrets in the way we thought. The very concept of an objective, observer-independent reality might be a human invention. A comforting fiction we tell ourselves to make sense of a universe that is fundamentally beyond human comprehension. We are like prisoners in Plato's cave, but worse. The prisoners in the cave could at least imagine that there was a real world outside, casting shadows on the wall. But Heisenberg's discovery suggests that there might be no outside to imagine. The shadows on the wall might be all there is. Reality might be nothing more than the patterns of our observations, with no underlying substance casting those patterns. Consider what this means for every aspect of human knowledge. History might not be a record of what actually happened, but a quantum superposition of all possible pasts that gets collapsed into specific narratives by the act of historical investigation. Science might not be discovering pre-existing natural laws, but creating those laws through the very process of scientific observation. Even mathematics, that most abstract and seemingly objective of disciplines, might be subject to quantum uncertainty. The mathematical theorems we prove might not be eternal truths, but temporary crystallizations of mathematical possibility that could change if we approached them differently. This doesn't mean that science is useless or that we should abandon the quest for knowledge, but it does mean that we need to be humble about what knowledge can achieve. We can map the patterns of our observations. We can predict what we're likely to see when we perform certain measurements. We can build technologies based on these predictions. But we can never know what the universe is really like when no one is looking. We can never step outside the prison of observation to see reality as it truly is. We are forever trapped in the world of appearances, forever separated from the thing in itself, and perhaps most unsettling of all, we can never know whether our observations are revealing a pre-existing reality or creating reality through the very act of observation. We might be explorers discovering a new continent, or we might be artists painting a picture that comes to life as we paint it. We have no way to tell the difference. Let me give you a concrete example of how disturbing this really is. Right now, scientists are using powerful telescopes to observe distant galaxies. According to classical physics, they're simply collecting light that has traveled through space for billions of years, revealing what those galaxies looked like in the distant past. But according to quantum mechanics, the act of observation might be forcing those galaxies to choose definite properties at the moment of observation. The light from those galaxies might not have had a definite path through space until it hit the telescope's detector. The entire history of those galaxies might be crystallizing into definiteness only now, as we observe them. This means that our observations of the past might literally be creating the past. The universe might not have a fixed history, but a quantum superposition of all possible histories that gets collapsed into specific narratives by our acts of observation. We might not be discovering the history of the cosmos. We might be writing it. And here's an even more disturbing thought. If our observations are creating the past, then what happens when we stop observing? Does the past dissolve back into quantum uncertainty? Are we constantly creating and destroying history through our acts of attention and inattention? This is the world that Heisenberg revealed to us, a world where knowledge changes what there is to know, where observation creates what is observed, where reality itself might be nothing more than a persistent illusion, created by the act of trying to understand it. But wait, it gets even worse. If quantum mechanics applies to everything, including the measuring instruments we use to study quantum systems, then those instruments themselves are subject to quantum uncertainty. This creates what physicists call the measurement problem. How can an uncertain measuring device produce certain results? Some physicists have suggested that the measurement problem can only be solved by invoking consciousness. Perhaps conscious observation is the only thing that can collapse quantum superpositions into definite states. But this raises the terrifying possibility that reality depends not just on observation, but on conscious observation. If this is true, then the universe might literally depend on consciousness for its existence. Without conscious observers, reality might dissolve into pure quantum possibility. The cosmos might be nothing more than a vast unconscious dream, waiting for minds to wake up and dream it into definiteness. And here's the most terrifying implication of all. If consciousness is required to collapse quantum superpositions, then what happens when all conscious beings die? Will the universe dissolve back into quantum uncertainty? Will reality itself cease to exist when the last conscious observer closes their eyes for the final time? This possibility suggests that consciousness might not be a byproduct of evolution, but a fundamental feature of the universe. Perhaps the cosmos evolved conscious beings, not by accident, but by necessity. Perhaps consciousness is the universe's way of observing itself into existence. But this raises even more questions. If consciousness is fundamental, where did it come from? How did unconscious matter give rise to conscious observers? And if consciousness creates reality, then what created consciousness? We might be living in a universe that is fundamentally paradoxical, where consciousness creates matter, but matter creates consciousness, where observers create the observed, but the observed creates observers. We might be trapped in a cosmic chicken and egg problem that has no solution. Heisenberg understood the profound implications of his discovery. In his later years, he wrote extensively about the philosophical problems raised by quantum mechanics. He realized that his uncertainty principle wasn't just a technical detail about atomic physics. It was a fundamental statement about the nature of reality itself. The conception of objective reality has thus evaporated, he wrote, not into the cloud of some obscure new reality concept, but into the transparent clarity of a mathematics that represents no longer the behavior of particles, but rather our knowledge of this behavior. Read that sentence again. Heisenberg is telling us that objective reality has evaporated. Not that we can't know objective reality, but that objective reality itself has dissolved into mathematics. The universe might not be made of matter and energy, but of information and possibility. This is perhaps the most radical idea in the history of human thought, that reality itself might be informational rather than material. The solid world we experience might be nothing more than patterns of information, mathematical relationships that somehow give rise to the illusion of physical existence. If this is true, then we are living in something like a cosmic computer simulation, but not one created by some external programmer. We are living in a self-creating, self-modifying simulation, where the observers and the observed are all part of the same informational process, and the most terrifying part, we can never know if this is true. The very act of trying to test whether reality is informational requires observation, which changes what we're trying to test. We are trapped in an epistemological prison of our own making, forever cut off from the reality we're trying to understand. Nature doesn't just hide from us. Nature might be hiding because there's nothing there to find. The universe might be fundamentally empty of the kind of reality we're looking for. What we call reality might be nothing more than the patterns created by our attempts to observe, something that doesn't exist independently of observation. And that possibility, that the universe might be fundamentally empty of objective reality, is perhaps the most terrifying discovery of all. We might be living in a cosmic hall of mirrors, where every observation reflects back our own expectations and assumptions, where there is no external reality to ground our experience. Every time you close your eyes, the world around you might dissolve into a superposition of all possible worlds. Every time you open them, you might be collapsing infinite possibilities into a single, arbitrary reality. You might not be observing the universe. You might be creating it, moment by moment, observation by observation, without ever knowing what you're creating or why. This is the world that Heisenberg revealed to us, a world where knowledge changes what there is to know, where observation creates what is observed, where reality itself might be nothing more than a persistent illusion created by the act of trying to understand it. And the most terrifying part, we can never know if this is true. The very act of trying to test whether reality exists independently of observation requires observation, which changes what we're trying to test. We are trapped in an epistemological prison of our own making, forever cut off from the reality we're trying to understand. Welcome to the quantum universe, where nothing is certain except uncertainty itself, where reality plays an eternal game of hide-and-seek, and where the seekers might be creating what they think they're seeking to find. The universe is not only stranger than we suppose, it is stranger than we can suppose. And Heisenberg was the first to peer behind the curtain and discover that there might be no wizard there at all. Just the endless, terrifying dance of possibility and observation, creating the illusion of a solid world from the quantum foam of pure potential. And we are both the dancers and the dance, forever trapped in a reality that exists only because we're looking for it, and disappears the moment we try to catch it in the act of being real. Nature hides from us, not because it's shy, but because there might be nothing there to hide. And that, perhaps, is the most terrifying discovery of all.